Hello everybody, Adrian Plus here,
Yes, and Bridget. Hello.
and we have reached number 200, unless I'm wrong, 245 in Sounding the Shallows.
Yes, and
Well, I don't think anyone would be surprised to hear that after the events of this week on the news, that the truth has suddenly become very interesting without going into the details of what people have been talking about, but there have been some statements made that are clearly not exactly wishful thinking, but calculated thinking. And suddenly, because things are said with confidence, many people believe them. I suppose my mind was running around truth in general and things that have happened to us and things we've seen in connection with that. So,
and how easy it is for, I think we mentioned last week that heresy always contains a bit of truth.
well,
And there
sometimes
may
a covering
be,
of truth.
I can't see much truth in what's happening at the moment, but maybe there's elements of it. But how distorted and ugly it can become when there isn't any light, there isn't any.
Well, no one ever justifies untruth or heresy, but in any other way than by saying it's true. So that covering is always there when people do that. But at the moment, especially with populist leadership and that kind of thing, it's very difficult. There we go. But on a much more ordinary level, I was thinking about, if you remember that time when we were sitting around the dinner table, and we had about eight or nine people, I suppose.
They were a mixed bunch, and some of them were kids, weren't they?
Some were children, yeah.
And some of them were cleverer than us. Some of them were. We were a mixed.
Surely not.
They were a mixed bunch of people,
Anyway.
which was why I was quite surprised at you throwing out this question.
As is my way, I thought I'd ask them a question. So I said, how many of us tell lies? And what interested, amused and surprised me was that everyone put their hands up, including me and the children, as though I was talking nonsense. Of course, you know, that it was weird in a way because the hands went up so quickly. And I think we talked about it for a bit, but afterwards I remember I said to you, why do all these liars tell the truth? You know, all people who say we don't tell the truth sometimes. But why would their hands go up so quickly? And the answer seemed to be because they felt safe. When you're in a place where you are safe enough, it's okay. And we see that in the church and politics and all sorts of places, don't we? That is the case. But it's an elusive thing, the
It's
truth.
so frightening where there are no gaps, it feels at the moment, for the truth to get in and to change things. And I suddenly was reminded of something. I didn't come across it. I suddenly reminded of something. We have a picture, don't we, painted by a friend of ours, which is one of our favourite pictures, which is of apples up in a loft.
Yeah, that's right. And it's based on quite a famous poem.
It's based on a poem,
Yeah.
but the thing is, before I read the poem, we've struggled because it is as though those apples are lying somewhere in the dusk, in the dark. How the heck do we light that picture?
Well, it is a dark picture.
It is,
but
because that's where the apples are.
If you get a torch and you shine it at it, which you're obviously not going to do all day, suddenly everything is illuminated in every way.
It is.
And it's based on this poem. So just read the poem if you've got it.
Another interesting thing, and it's called Moonlit Apples, and it's by John Drinkwater, but it was written in 1917, where something was going on in the world pretty awful.
1917. In the war, you mean?
Yes.
During the war, yeah.
So the point I'm making is that this was written in a time where, again, people were trying to find the truth and not finding it. Decisions were being made that, looking back retrospectively, There were some terrible decisions made.
Yeah. Well, if anyone comes to our house, come ask us where the picture is, because we're still trying to work out a picture that we love. How do we manage to see it properly?
Yeah, I won't read all of the poem, but I will just read some of it.
Go on.
At the top of the house, the apples are laid in rows, and the skylight lets the moonlight in, and those apples are deep sea apples of green. There goes a cloud on the moon in the autumn night. A mouse in the wainscot scratches and scratches, and then there's no sound at the top of the house of men or mice. And the cloud is blown, and the moon again dapples the apples with deep sea light. And then the last verse. In the corridors under there's nothing but sleep, and stiller than ever on orchard boughs they keep tryst with the moon, and deep is the silence, deep on moon-washed apples of wonder. And it's that idea that they can hardly be seen. They're just there, be kept for the winter.
They're in the loft, aren't they?
They're in the loft,
Yeah,
in a hope
yeah.
that they'll still be all right the next year and can be used for apple pies. They're ordinary in themselves. But when that light from the skylight, it moon washes them with wonder. And I thought, what a wonderful way to talk about when truth is allowed in. And suddenly there's a yes, of course. Of course that's right. There's been some rubbish over what Zelensky is and that he's a dictator. And then the truth comes in and it's suddenly, of course. Of course that's right. I think we get a bit boring about truth, as though it's a sort of I don't know, rather dismal thing that we're supposed to tell the truth. And as you say in the Liar's Lunch, because it was a safe place, there was a freedom to say, well, of course we fudge it, but that's not all of who we are.
Certainly, most of the positive, and we've had plenty of negative things over the years, most of the positive responses to stuff I've written has been where people could identify with something that they couldn't before because they were worried they wouldn't be able to say it. So, no, do you want to hear something really crass about me now?
Well, I probably know most of the things. I don't know. What were you going to say?
You think you do. No, actually, you will remember this. It was some years ago, and I was on the train coming from London down to Polegate.
Yeah, because we lived in Sussex,
Kensington, And I was reading in the newspaper about the death of a footballer. And this footballer had been, I think he was one of the very first black footballers who played for England.
You can't remember his name?
No,
It doesn't matter
I was
anyway.
trying to think.
No, it doesn't matter.
Someone else, he played for Manchester United as well. Someone now is saying, of course it's...
And
but
you
I
will,
remember.
immediately this finishes,
Yeah,
you
I
will
will.
know who it was.
Anyway, there it was, this piece. And I may have got this wrong. It may have been he said this when he retired, but forgive me, everybody, if I've got this wrong. Anyway, it was a piece about him. One of the things that had been particularly memorable about him was that I don't think he was ever received a yellow card during his career. He was
Gary
what you
Lineker
call
has
a
never received a...
Oh, well, Gary Lineker is another one. But, this was another one. And what I read was that actually he had told somebody that it wasn't actually that he never fouled anybody. It was that he was much cleverer at concealing his fouls. And that actually he'd been guilty of a lot of things that if people had watched more closely, they'd have seen...
Which, of course, they would now with VAR, but
That's right. And he might have got a red card if he'd done that. Anyway, so...
It was very unusual for him to talk about that, wasn't it?
Well, he's finished his career.
I suppose so, but even so... I think it may be that he needed to say it.
I don't know.
He needed just to get that off his back, maybe.
Maybe they didn't care, probably, by then. He'd done his thing. I don't know. But... it upset me a bit because I'd always rather admired that about him, which may be a bit silly, but I did. So the train goes on and we arrive in Polegate. And I got off the train, and if you remember, when you got a taxi at Polegate, as we had to in those days, there were just a few taxis lined up just along from the station,
Yes,
quite
of
near
course
the,
I
near
do.
the track there. And I saw there was only one taxi. By the time I got off the train and got out of the station, there was only one taxi left. And I'd been at the back of the train, so when I got off, there was only one person left walking towards the taxi, and that was a quite elderly lady. And she was walking towards the taxi, and I know that I consciously decided to believe that she didn't want the taxi. She was going past the taxi to some other
Probably
person
being
picking
picked
her
up.
up
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something. Yes.
yeah.
No, I lied to myself, and I ran past her, or hurried past her, because I couldn't stand the thought of having to wait till another taxi arrived at this station where they hardly ever came. And I got as far as the taxi, and I'd won, and suddenly it was as though a red card was lifted, and I thought, you selfish git,
A professional
you have
foul.
deliberately committed a professional foul in order to get this taxi. And I did at least wait by the taxi until she got there, and I did ask her, do you need this taxi? So actually she didn't. So but what troubled me a bit was the ease with which I had convinced myself that I wasn't actually doing anything that had any negative moral connotations at all.
The reason I said about him maybe needing to sort of say it, maybe it had trundled around in his mind about these professional fouls, and he felt the need to actually talk about it. And the reason I say that is, you know, when my dad, in his 90s, and he had dementia, didn't he? And he really only had 2 stories, and both of them were connected with cricket.
Well, he had about 5, actually.
Oh, did he?
Wait, well, I didn't
I
have
can
many.
only think of 2.
Yeah, well,
Anyway,
I can
one
remember
of
a
them
few,
was when he didn't catch a ball, and really it was an easy one. He played cricket, didn't he, for Clitheroe? Second team, I think, but it was terribly important to him. And his father and his father's cronies came and watched the match, and on the way, and he had missed a catch that he should have caught, and he was very miserable because it meant that his team had lost. And walking back, he thought his father would be sympathetic, but his dad simply said, "They should have copped it, lad," and that was the end of it. But the other
sympathy there, was there?
But the other story that he remembered was a lie that he had told his mother much earlier, when he was really a boy, a teenager.
Probably. I think he was the scorer for a while.
He was the scorer. His picture is up in the
to
marquee, isn't
it?
It's
in the
not in the marquee, in the pavilion.
In the pavilion on the Clitheroe ground.
Clitheroe, yes.
Yeah, this he came back home from playing cricket, and he'd been out for a duck, and his mother asked him how he got on, and he said he scored 15 runs. Now, it's not a huge lie, is it? But
Can
for
you
some
imagine
reason,
it
just stuck with him all his life. But what was worse was later on, somebody discovered that he told his mother that he'd scored 15 runs, and so they knew he'd told a lie. And life was, in one sense, fairly simple in Clitheroe in those days. I mean, you weren't supposed to say you'd scored if you hadn't.
Well, no, or ever.
No, or ever, no.
But I was thinking, Adrian, I was reading just the other day about the Last Supper, and the fact that in the middle of this, we missed this out. We don't have this bit in every time we have communion together in a service. The fact that halfway through the meal, 2 of the disciples were talking about which was the greatest of them and where they would be, and how just about an hour before Jesus was taken to start the process towards his crucifixion. That must have come back, don't you think? Again and again and again. And I think we all have little things where they overwhelm us with a shame, but sometimes with also a rescue, like your situation where you suddenly came to.
Well, plenty of things in my memory that have no rescue. I'm sure
yes, I know that, but I mean, it is interesting that the moonlit apples, something so ordinary lying there so quietly, and then light comes in on it, and they look beautiful. And I think, when Jesus said the truth will set you free, he wanted that, didn't he? He wanted that once the truth gets in on something, it's different.
Well,
there's a light on it. It can be different.
To say it the way it was.
Yeah.
And it changed people's lives.
It changed people's lives. It could change things now. Truth has a shock effect of suddenly coming to your senses a little bit.
Well, especially if everybody's been sharing the same inability to tell the truth.
Yeah.
I was thinking, and we've both worked with kids in care a lot, haven't we? And I was thinking about, they are professional liars, those kids. Especially working...
Wishful liars.
No, professionals. Working in Birmingham in the secure unit there, where they had all sorts of kids there. And I used to have to sometimes question them about whether they'd done something or not.
Yes.
And
how extreme could it be? Yes.
The passion and the tears, passion and tears, not because I made them cry, but because it was part of their armoury for denial.
Yeah.
And I remember one boy in particular, who, if I hadn't been doing that job for quite a long time, I'd have said, I'm giving this lad a hard time. This is not fair.
Can you remember his name?
No, I can't. But reached a certain point where he was in tears. He cried.
Right.
And he said, I can remember him saying, Mr. Plass, I don't do that. I wouldn't do that. It's not what I do. And I just sat silent for a bit, and then he said, actually, I did do it.
Yeah.
And he was no longer tearful. He was not anything, because that was what he did when the police questioned him, or when he was in trouble anywhere else.
But what about the other time? I'm thinking about a lad called Delbert. We loved that name, didn't we? Because we thought it was a combination of... We thought it might have come from Dat Albert.
It
didn't
might,
we?
yes.
No, we don't know, but he was called Delbert anyway.
He was called
Can you
Delbert.
remember that one
I
wonderful...
remember it very well, yeah. There was a boy telling a story about something that happened at home. We had some great times up there, by the way. It wasn't all sort of...
I know.
Angst, but there were some good things. But anyway, this was funny. This lad was saying that he was confronted by a policeman, and he had to argue his way through this situation. Actually, at another time, we were helping them to learn how to speak to the police, I remember, in a different way, which sometimes helped them to avoid things they didn't want to happen. Anyway, so this was all very interesting about the policeman, and I said, well, that's really interesting. And this boy Delbert was standing behind him, and he said, I know, because I was there. And the other boy said, you weren't there. You've never been anywhere near where I live. You weren't there. And I said, why are you saying you were there? The only other person who was there was the policeman. And he said, I was that policeman. with absolute conviction. So the two of us, the boy and I, stood staring at him.
It's not that different from some of the things happening now, or how easy it is to just in the moment find a way out, find a way to wiggle past the truth into something else, really. Yeah. Because, we are told, aren't we, that we only see through a glass darkly. For goodness sake, it's a lovely, clear image, isn't it, of our, actually, that...
Well, as with so many things in the Bible, it contradicts other apparent truths. Truth is you can see clearly about God and what God does and what you do as a Christian and all that. This is in the middle of the book of Corinthians, isn't it, where it's about love and stuff.
So it's a letter,
yeah. But it's saying we can't really see. We don't know the truth. And one of the greatest enemies of not progress, but stability, certainly in the church, is when people don't know, either pretend or get too excited and claim to have more access to the truth than they actually do. So you get something very tidy. Going back to the sort of heresy thing, you cover the truth with something that sounds so attractively feasible and accessible that people suddenly want it, and they want the person who's propounded it. And actually, the older I get anyway, I don't know what you think, but I think the glass doesn't get any lighter. You come to different conclusions.
But I think I accept that, now, that, and in a way it's a great relief that there will be little glimpses. What was it C.S. Lewis who talked about being homesick? And you put it into a poem, homesick for a place I've never seen.
That's right,
and I think you get those glimpses where there's something so bright through the cracks that that even though you're perhaps not feeling it, thinking it, able to stand on it, you know that there is a truth there that is bright, and that it will transfigure the situation you're in, the moment you're in, the thought you have, that it is there, something so different and so pure and so, like the moonlight on the apples,
I like the whole moonlight on the apples thing. I like the fact that we haven't been able to light it. It gives a pungency to it. I don't. Obviously, we ought to. There's probably a device, isn't there, that you can buy that you fix to it.
Yeah, but that would take away all the struggles of putting it on one wall after another and moving light. No, I'm not serious.
Yeah, it's been distressing this week, and you know that because of my own background, I find people knowingly not telling the truth has a very negative effect on me.
Of course.
I just hope that things are open up and there is some real light shone on them, and that some people, including world leaders, will be bold enough and brave enough to say the way.
And the only thing we can do is try and be truthful with each other and with ourselves. No professional fouls allowed.
No. Okay, do my best. Okay, watch out for the red cards, everybody.
Yeah, and we always love to hear from you.
See you next week.
Bye.